Let's talk, baby. Let's talk. First full week of September. If you missed my September games to know, I talked about like half a dozen games on that list alone that are launching this upcoming week. That's how big of a week this actually is. I'm not overstating it from that aspect, right? There is a little bit of something out there this week for everyone. Plus, there's probably like twice as many this upcoming week that I didn't even cover in that video. This is a big week. I covered 15 games yesterday. 15 games yesterday. And there are probably 2 or 3 on that list that there were really good sleeper, filler, light style, or card games-esque. So if you missed that video, please go check that out because, again, you know me, I cover as much as possible in as much depth as possible. And I like talking about them too, because it's fun. That's why you got into this hobby in the first place, right? Let's do this. You know me at this point. I just love talking about games. This is the Fox Experiment. Elizabeth Hargrave, roll and write, set collection, breeding, domesticating foxes. Now, it's not a roll and write like it was first being, prompted out during Gen Con, but it's more than that. And hype from Gen Con was very, very positive. So take that for what you will, but this is a very intriguing concept. And it's more appealing to me, actually, than anything else animal-wise that I've seen recently in the last 6 months to a year. And I say that as someone who wasn't a fan of Wingspan in the first place. So what do we got going on here? You're going to be drafting, essentially, parent foxes. And those parent foxes are going to have traits, and then you're going to gather the corresponding dice. You're going to roll the corresponding dice, and you're going to try and manipulate the foxes around the different areas in order to mate them successfully. New generation formed, put to the kennel, rinse, repeat. I don't really know much else about the actual gameplay than that, but this one is starting off this video for a reason. This is probably the one that I am most likely to consider backing. There are 2 others in the top 5 here that I am also very, very, very high on, but we'll get to those in a second. This one is launching on the 6th, and this is coming from Pandasaurus. Now, the other interesting thing is Pandasaurus has really been sort of up and down. They have done a lot of retail over the last couple of years. I'm looking at That Time You Killed Me, but their last project, Skate Summer, is just coming to backers in the near future, and there weren't really a whole lot of enticements. It didn't really gangbusters blow the doors off anything on crowdfunding because all of the exclusives were just sort of aesthetic exclusives. So are we going to see something here? I doubt it. And so that's going to be the big question with all of these games. Let me be very clear. The publishers on the vast majority of these games are not known for their exclusives or their extra content. They are mostly known for offering a really good product, period. And that's ultimately more important, but that ultimately also begs the question that I raised in the other video of why am I getting on crowdfunding then? Why am I not waiting to see how it actually plays out in more detail? All of these will have a dozen videos from various high name channels and things that you can watch, but sometimes you just want hands-on. I want hands-on for some of these products that I just can't discern, or ones that I'm sort of hemming and hawing on, right? That's what I'm looking for with this one. Similarly, right here, we're going to go over to Legacy of You from Shem Phillips and Garfield Games, a solo-based campaign game scenario where you're defending your village, trying to prevent it from flooding, trying to prevent it from invaders, and having an automatic sort of self-balancing difficulty system that they've implemented that is also resettable. I know several big names have also gotten this. I've seen it fluttering around. I think Space Biff has a copy. I think he put his review out recently. So again, you're going to see a lot of the similar names, faces, and shapes in terms of who's who on these videos this week. And the question just is, do you want another solo game that looks like this? Do you have enough campaign games? Can you get a campaign game that is solo played? Yeah, solo is easier to play sometimes, but how many campaign games do you need? And like I mentioned just a second ago with Pandasaurus, Garfield Games is notorious for offering a promo pack, which is already listed in the Legacy of You Board Game Geek page. And that's going to be probably the main enticement, as they've done with a lot of their other series all coming to crowdfunding in the last couple years. And if you're anything like me, promos, a few scattered promos are not necessarily enough for me to pay 50% more nowadays, because I also don't get to play with the promos hardly at all, right? Even if you include them, your chances of playing with them oftentimes are slim to none. You don't even get them, in your draw pile or your deck. And so that's the aspect of things. That's why I can't necessarily see myself fully backing this one. I'm also, I'm not a huge solo player. I like the idea of it, and I would be open to more experimentation with it. But it's hard to crowdfund something for me personally from that aspect. Like, Garfield Games is one of those companies that I wish I was on their media list, because I'd love to try out some of their games, because I could see myself very strongly, as someone who does not traditionally play the type of games they put out there, willingness to actually like them, you know, sort of a Dune Imperium for me, which was a huge smashing success. I look at something like this, where I go, you know, this or Wayfarers of the South Tigris, as something that really probably is outside of my comfort zone that could really actually be a good fit. But I'm a hands-on on those situations, not a I'm going to crowdfund it and sort of see, right? Because I'm buying to play, not buying to take a chance and resell if I need to. This is launching on the 6th as well. Now, next up, we have Forsaken. I mean, speaking of publishers that are out there, right? This is coming from Game Trace. Game Trace is giving us an open sandbox world that you can play through, sort of Dune-esque, sort of Mad Max-esque, where you're trying to become a legend in the world. And you're going to do so via various quests, various bad guys, various adventures. And it's just going to be more of a narrative style campaign. And we've seen a lot of that. I literally just got my Trudvang pledge like a day or two ago. And that book is, the storybook of that is thick. I was not expecting that. I don't pay attention to the crowdfunding updates often. I pledge something and then I just wait for it to show up. But this is what we've got going on here. And this is another foray into the open world campaign narrative. You know, Aridia. We saw it with Glans of Galzir. We're seeing more and more of it overall. The question, again, just like Legacy of You, is how many of these can you have? How many of these can you get played? How easy is the put out, play, pick up, save, re-put out at a later date? How much of that stuff do you have to do? And that's sometimes a big turn on or a turn off. There's a lot of stuff going on here on this picture. And so, you know, take that for what you will. I mean, it's very intriguing. I like all the stuff that looks like it's asymmetric powers and upgrades and, you know, battling and all of that stuff. But, you know, if I can't get it played, how easy is it going to be to justify the price? So it's kind of a weird picture right in the middle there of Quackalope. Sorry. But this is some sort of dice tower as well that's going along with it. I wasn't aware of that either in the description. So how does that make you feel? Interesting? Intriguing? What's the price point going to be? Because even these games right now, these are costing us $100 before any expansions. How many of these from the triple digit price point are you willing to go for? It's launching on the 6th. We'll see where it goes. Now, next one. This is one of the other two that I really could see myself backing. I am mixed feelings on Thunderworks' previous role player titles, right? I like Cartographers. I think Cartographers Heroes does it better, so I think you can get rid of Cartographers. Role player is fine. The expansions make it more replayable. Otherwise, it feels very samey. And this is a tile-laying, more economic style game set in the same universe. Thunderworks does an absolutely amazing product, period. Just like the other companies, publishers that I've mentioned. But similarly with their other games on crowdfunding, especially the latest Role Player Adventures, which also is having an expansion from Thunderworks coming out later this year as well. I think sometime, what did they say, October, November? I'm forgetting it off the top of my head. But they're not giving you a whole lot of incentive, you know, except for early. And that is going to be the main one for me on this, because I really like tile placement games. I really like the look of this one overall. 5 of 10 factions that you're picking out to use from, 6 map tiles configured in 100,000 different ways. I'm making that up, but you know, it's approximately 100,000 ways. You're manipulating these factions, battling them, utilizing their abilities to back and forth. I have no idea what else, but it just screams Liege of Games. It just screams that from the top. And so this is probably the highest of them on my wish list if everything else is equal and pans out. It's a big if there, though. Again, 6th, all so far launching on the 6th. Now, this next one, if you know me, if you watch the other video, you're going to know which one this is. If you don't know me, if you're tuning in for the first time, this is Atlas Lost, Rise of the New Sovereigns. This is from the designer of Aqua Garden. You may remember that with the really cool animal meeples that came out a couple years ago. The subsequent one that I'm completely blanking on in the middle of this video, but this is sort of a tactical civ building, upgrading, RPG-esque game. That just looks really freaking sweet, right? Post-apocalyptic tech tree resource management? Oh yeah, checking those boxes, baby. The tech itself utilizes different mechanisms. Upgrade your army, battle, be the first one to score 30 points in order to win. I think this looks freaking fantastic. Now, I worry about the symbology. I worry about the networking of all of those different mechanics all together. But if you have a design like this, if you are looking at these Japanese games, as I've said every single time I talk about them, if you're going to get it, you need to get it on crowdfunding. This is the one so far that you're not going to have as much of a chance to get on the secondary market. You're not going to have a chance to get it at a retail wide availability. And if the designer does what he did with Ostia, that was the name of the other game, Aqua Garden, that, you know, you're going to pay essentially 50% extra, plus probably shipping, to get it post-campaign, like Aqua Garden is right now, when it's the expansions have been available as well from his personal website. And that's saying something. And so this is the other one that I'm going to give a lot of hype to, that not a lot of other people are going to have on their radar. And that's why I think all of this stuff, just like my video from yesterday, this is the reason I bring this stuff to you. This is the stuff that needs the attention as well, just as much, because the other stuff's going to have it from, you know, again, 37 different channels and paid previews and paid playthroughs and played explanations. But this is something that's going to not have the hype, and we need to give a little bit of less bias. I'm going somewhere with that. That'll come up in the future too. That's a whole nother video that I want to see out there from that aspect. So there you go. Merchant's Cove, right? Worker placement, resource management. This is Mastercraft. This is a new, I'm assuming it's going to be more of just expansion. I don't think it's really a standalone. They're bringing you, I think, 5 new merchants that you're going to be able to incorporate into the base game already that are supposed to be more expert level, more complicated for those that are craving more out of it in the first place. And I say this as someone who has no interest in this game originally because of the heavier worker placement, upgradable different faction elements. And I'm okay with that. However, I know the big criticism was that the base game felt like it needed a little bit more of that variability, and the expansions, you know, again, just reading secondhand comments and threads and reviews, that it needed the expansion to really give it a little bit more legs. And I don't know about that. I mean, I always feel mixed about that. I have a couple of games like that, you know, definitely, you know, I'd like the expansion in there. But do you, just like with, let's say Moonrakers, which I just used the example of a couple weeks ago, do you want an expansion that fixes the issues of the base game? Are you willing to pay that much extra to get it fixed? Anyway, I mean, that's what we're seeing here, though. I don't know what in terms of exclusives there were. I think it was just a better price point, but don't quote me on that as well. Now, excuse me, it actually says 4 different factions as well as a festival. A festival that's going to offer you different modular content in order to incorporate in your game to give more of that variability that everyone is so desperate for all of the time now with every single game, because you don't have enough games, so you need high replayability in every single one of them because you're getting all of them to the table multiple times a day, week, month, year, right? You have nothing in shrink on your shelves, right? Anyway, so I'm including myself in that comment. I'll go back to where I said with Garfield Games though. This is another try before I buy. Like, I would be completely open to trying a game of this, but this is not a game that I would be willing to pony up money for, sight unseen, just by the nature of my own personal bias and my own personal taste. So I think a lot of people are going to be all over this when it launches. Final Frontier Games has a really good game on their hands, I think. It's relatively very well received. But the question is just going to be, how much more of a content bundle do you need for a game like this, right? How much more? How many expansions? How many factions? I'm looking at my pile of root sitting behind the camera. Anyway, but that's the thought, right? How much more are you willing to pay? How much more are you willing to get for a game like this? So take that for you will. This is actually launching on the 7th, though. We got to have one departure from that aspect of things, right? Let's go to the rest that you need to know, because again, I still have like 8 or 9 games I'm going to be talking about this week, because this is just an absolutely jam-packed week, not only just on the big Tuesday, but we are going all the way to Friday in this week. This is still launching on the 6th. This is USC Reach. This is a spacefaring 2 to 4 player game where you're trying to essentially, in terms of trying to secure a landing space on a planet in order to achieve the most victory points. What's different here, though, is you're going to be allocating your crew to different ship compartments, departments, in order to maximize their efficiency in sort of a closed drafting situation, as they're calling it. So this is going to be interesting because we've seen a lot of spacefaring games. What's the unique mechanism? What makes this stand out apart? And what is it going to bring that's different from other similar, space colonization, space exploration, space landing games? The one thing I saw just on the Board Game Geek page is that there's deck building as well as variable player turn order. And I'm always intrigued about how games are going to do variable player turn order situations. So that might be the thing that gives this a little bit more spice, if you will. This is launching on the 6th. And next up launching on the 6th, we have Fortify. This is somehow going to be dice rolling as well as worker placements, where you're basically just trying to build, as this may appear, a bigger cardboard box fort in order to allow more people into your fort, to produce more water balloons, to take out your opponents in a more expeditious manner. You want to try to be the first one to claim the opponent's base and win the neighborhood. There is barely one preview on the Board Game Geek page, but otherwise, that is the general gist and description. You're going to have to check it out in the 6th if you want to know more information in the meantime. Gosh, next up, we have something completely outside of my depth, but I talk about everything as much as I can, right? History of the Ancient Seas, Part 1, Hellas, Athens versus Greece. 2-player action management game. They call it micro impulses, where you're going to be taking one of 8 different actions on your turn. Now, the tricky part with this game is that after you take your action, your opponent has to take a different action. They cannot take the same action, and there's going to be some sort of mechanism to keep that in check. You're going to be building your fleet, expanding your trade routes, trying to become a better empire than your opponent. Now, with those micro impulse actions that I mentioned, it doesn't seem like all 8 of the actions that you have potentially at your disposal are actually at your disposal on each turn. So you may have more of a limited context in that setting as well to make your choices even that much more strategic. I'm not going to say difficult, but strategic. Important. Now, how are you going to be moving your 3D wooden pieces across this map? Well, that's up to you. Are you going to go heavy war? Are you going to go more peace? How do you choose to be interacting with your opponent on the board with various risks, benefits, and consequences therein? Does that intrigue you as a 2-player game? It's an interesting concept. I'll give it that. Check it out when the 6th, when it launches. Next up, we have Floor Plan. No picture here. Floor Plan, the Winchester Mystery House. Based on this, it's based on the real-life Winchester Mystery House. Our Victorian architecture is really kind of cool. 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, and 40 staircases. Getting your steps in on that one, right? Simultaneous action selection as a solo, potentially up to 6-player game where it's a licensed product of the original Floor Plan. 3 of 15 scoring cards each game that you're going to be trying to achieve. When somebody gets 5 goals, you win. Now, if you're not familiar here with the original Floor Plan, this is what the original Floor Plan is, where you have 2 dice, you roll them, you design a various room that is offered or available to you, rinse and repeat via those goals and bonuses that I just mentioned. So is this different IP version going to be better? Is it going to be different enough? Is it more than just a thematic incorporation difference? Those are rolling right. Those are really hitting hard lately, so we'll see what it can do when it launches on the 6th. Next up, we also have, as one of the astute commenters on Board Game Geek alerted me to this, Weimar, the fight for democracy. We're going back further. We're going back to World War I with this one. Social Democrats and conservatives versus the communists and the nationalists in the fight for democracy. Taking more of the historical incorporation of saying, hey, what's going to happen to Germany? Are they going to actually remain a republic, or are they going to fall into the hands of the Nazis? There are going to be a twofold dynamic of positions that you're going to be trying to win. One is more of a political discourse where there is public opinion you are trying to win over, and one is going to be more of a physical configuration where you're trying to win the streets themselves, rioters, demonstrators, and that ilk. Now, this is going to be a card-driven game. This is going to be more like, Twilight Struggle, if you will, in that ilk, at least from outward appearance. 6 rounds that you're going to be achieving as well as competing over to find or declare the winner. This is also launching on the 6th. Next up, Magical Friends and How to Summon Them. This is a relaunch, actually. I remember covering this the first time around. This is also launching on the 6th. This is going up against a lot of competition. This is a relaunch, as I mentioned. You have 50 different animals, summons, familiars, creatures that you're going to be able to utilize, that you're going to be trying to summon to the inn over an 8-round period. The one who summons the most wins. But all these creatures are going to have asymmetric abilities or actions that are going to change the dynamic of what you're doing. This was a game that I thought flew under the radar the first time around and needed just some sprucing up, some fine-tuning. And I'm really intrigued to see what they can offer us the second time, because I didn't think the concept was bad at all. I thought the concept was really intriguing, actually. And I just hope that, like a lot of the other ones, like Fog Escape from Paradise that we saw this past week, the second time around has really been the charm for a lot of campaigns this year. And I'm hoping that this one will be successful as well, because I kind of like the aesthetic too. And the gameplay is really intriguing. I just hope we get a fuller picture and a good reason to back now at a price that we can afford, especially when we're going up against this competition this week. Then also on the 6th, we have an Age Contrived. 1 to 5 player fantasy Euro game with action programming resource management. So if we hop over to their website really quickly here, just a different concept as an engine builder, if you will. You are one of the gods, you are one of the pantheons of your various choice, and you're going to be taking 5 different ways to build your engine, because you have to be very careful, because your power as a member of the pantheon is dependent on the number of believers that you have. Each of these pantheons are going to have different unique player powers that are going to be available to help you convince more people to believe in you. It's an interesting concept, because on the Board Game Geek page, they talk about the fact that the turns are not really necessarily turns. You either have 2 options on these no phase turns, is essentially what they're trying to call them, is you either transfigure or you openly program your transfiguration. And the difference between that is, one, you're either programming it to a certain extent, or you are utilizing all of the actions that have been programmed in there in the first place. And so how many are you going to program? How long can you wait? When is the appropriate time to do that? As a game that could completely fly under the radar here, and I really didn't know a whole lot more before looking at this today, the question is, why? What? Show me more. Give me a rule book. Give me something to believe in. I'm curious. You've piqued me. Let's check it out when it launches on the 6th. So, what else we got launching on the 6th? We have a couple others here. Rise and Fall. A 40 to 80 minute, 2 to 4 player strategic civ building game that they say with no luck, purely strategy. Creation of the world itself is also going to be a heavy part of this. You're going to have 6 various actions that are going to be displayed out in front of you on these cards, which they say, quote unquote, easy access for players that are just getting into it, as well as more immersive control for those more experienced with the gameplay after several times. You start out with a small tribe and you're expanding, you're growing, you're creating a civilization here. I'm going to give this one a look-see, but I don't know. Can you do a great civ building game in 40 to 80 minutes? Is it really going to be 40 to 80 minutes? Is it going to overstay its welcome? How complicated are the rules going to be? How much nuance, how much Euro, how much of that pure strategy is something that I'm okay with, and something that I just, I like a little bit of chaos. I like a little bit of luck. I like a little bit of randomness. So is it going to be too much of that for me? We'll see. It's going up against a lot of other stuff with a lot more name power, but it's doing something, at least it appears different on the surface, so we'll see where it goes. Next up here, we have Quodd Heroes. Quodd Heroes, the 2nd edition, is going to be relaunching on the 6th as well, which was an odd, interesting day that they're going to choose for their relaunch. They went with a $100,000 goal on the last campaign. And if we pull up the previous Kickstarter page, they raised over $100,000, but $100,000 was not enough. Have we seen that a lot? We've seen that a fair amount recently. And so the question is going to be, what is that funding goal going to look like? Because again, you didn't have like 200 people. You had 1,000 people and $100,000. So they're going to change some of the levels. I mean, I think it was just too premium at times. And that's sort of where people were in, but also out. And I think it's one of those where you have a Euthia, where we need a certain number of a certain number. We need a certain number of the higher deluxe. We need a certain number of in general to get this. This page was just a little bit of everything all mixed up. So I hope it's just the design is a little bit cleaner this time too, because they had to sort of do all of this, which they actually put out like a whole new chart down here at the bottom if you get down. But the basic gist of it is you have these dice that you're going to be rolling and moving, and they each have different abilities and asymmetric powers that you're going to be utilizing as they turn and as you upgrade them. So it's a really cool concept, but the price point as well last time for just the 2nd edition here, was 154 Canadian dollars, $120. Now, this is the premium edition, the super premium edition. So just the regular retail edition was still $50. I'm probably not going to get the retail edition if I'm going to go on crowdfunding, right? Like, I'm going to be looking at the higher one, and that's expensive. That's a spicy meatball. So that's a Holy Hyperspace Kraken. Haven't heard that reference in a while, have you? Yeah, I haven't forgotten. Maybe that's going to be on my merch that I'll eventually do, maybe, if I'm not too scared to do it. Anyway, so this gives you everything that you want to know about the previous Kickstarter page. But the question just is, do you need it super deluxe? Do you need it super premium? Do you need these dice guys to be colored? Do you need all of those aspects of things? Do you want the expansion that's going to go with it and that's going to make it just that price point? It's a great thing. I'm not sure it's a price I'm willing to pay, again, for a game I haven't played. I think the concept is great. I think the execution seems great, but whether or not it's going to be a fit is another $120 price point that I'm not really willing to go into yet necessarily, because I've got other games that play out at an $18, $20, $30, $50 level that I know will be a fit no matter what. And $120 is still $120 is a gamble, right? Especially when you have all the competition nowadays and you have everything across the board. So Quodd Heroes, let's see what they can do. Let's see how people respond with their revamp when they launch on the 6th again. We're going to skip a couple days forward and we're going to go over to Rivet Wars Reloaded. Now, this is coming from Steamforge, right? Steamforge, not CMON. CMON put this one out originally. Steamforge has picked this one up, and this is Reloaded because this is a second edition. The previous one was from 2014. This is not a cyberpunk, not a steampunk. This is a diesel punk skirmish game set in sort of the World War aspect, where you're going to be having basically the little mechs, chibi style, that are going to be going up against each other. So does that appeal to you? You're going to have some sort of Kickstarter exclusive factions that are going to be available. And if we know Steamforge, we're going to have at least 2 or 3 expansions that are going to go along with it from the get-go. Now, I mean, from the get-go of whether or not they're going to be on launch day or they're going to show up sometime during the campaign. Well, you know, probably the latter at least, maybe the former if you're lucky. So the question is just going to be the price point. What does the price point look like this? Because Steamforge, as with a lot of these other companies, Steamforge definitely gives you a price discount on the campaign page, a significant one at times, because there are other games that are going to their web shop have been more pricey. You know, I'm looking at Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry is like another good 50% higher in the web shop than it was in the crowdfunding campaign. So you're going to be better price-wise. It's just a question of what are you bringing to me that's different from the gameplay from the first time around? And not that the gameplay was bad, but why am I going to reinvest in a skirmish style game when there are many, many, many skirmish style games out there that are already well established and have a superb backing and following already? Tactical nuance, action cards, strategic battle planning for objectives that are not just kill, kill, smash, smash. Okay, Steamforge, show me what you got on the 9th. We'll hop back over to the 6th here for a second, and we'll go back with Elric, Rise of the Young Kingdoms. Now, unfortunately, this is also a relaunch. Not a whole lot of information on the Board Game Geek page, but you can check out the previous page, which was $24,000, which is not insignificant, based on novels, apparently, that I had no clue about. This is going to be a competitive, and they say dark fantasy tile laying game with modular setup. Okay. You're clicking some keywords here, but you've got miniatures, but you're going to be talking $140 price point, essentially, plus or minus shipping at that point. So a lot of tiles, some exclusives, mostly miniatures. Yeah, how do you feel about that? To be completely honest with you, I don't even remember covering this one. I don't even know if I covered this one the first time around. And it looks like it was maybe back in April. So gameplay wise, you're having these tiles that you're going to be trying to conquer, and you're going to be triggering effects, utilizing action cards, as well as the help of your allies and rolling dice at the same time somehow. There's going to be resources that you're going to be taking from those places and improving your own areas so that other people can't do the same to you. So the rulebook's here. Check it out. I have no idea what to make of this. As a French publisher, okay, give me more. Give me more. Give me more. I have no clue what this one's going to look like, but miniatures with tile placement, interesting combination. We'll see where it goes. Then if we hop over here to the Board Game Geek page, a very descriptive picture here, but this is Weird Giraffe Games. This is an 18 card sort of small deck, button shy-esque game where you are going to be using chemicals to create valuable compounds without causing explosions, right? That's always the trick in Chem Lab. I want the bang without the bang, right? So 18 card, Fire in the Library universe, pressure luck, strategy-based card game. So you have phases that you're going to be going through, as well as dealing with not trying to trigger unstable mixtures. Beakers are the indicators for the timing of the game, indicating the fire level, as well as the scoring potential of mixtures in the first place. You score those beakers at the end of every round. They change values depending on the chemicals that you've mixed, moving it closer to the end of the game. So 18 cards, Button Shy-esque adjacent. Weird Giraffe Games has given us something different. Imagining the price point is going to be relatively reasonable. If you want or like that sort of thing, definitely give this one a look-see, as it's also launching on the 6th. Now, launching back on the 9th here, we have Tales of War as well. This is a 2-player tactical-based token skirmish style game with asymmetric units that you're going to be utilizing to battle back and forth. It reminds me more of sort of a simplified version of the Duke, if you're familiar with that 2-player game. It gives me vibes of that with the tiles with the asymmetric abilities. And you can see the attacks and the defenses that are on them, and then you're going to have different ranges and different ways that they're going to be interacting. Now, the difference between this and the Duke is that they're saying that this has more of an RPG feel, while these characters are going to be upgradable and they're going to learn new skills or abilities as you progress. There's going to be some sort of campaign with it too. I have no clue how you do a campaign in this scenario as well, but there you go. They're going for it. I've seen a lot of advertisement and a lot of, links for this on Facebook. So they have a heavier presence there, or at least they've been trying to have a heavier presence there. This looks like a lighter style game with hopefully more strategic tactical depth, but it's still skirmish with upgrades. So what is the price point going to look like, and where is it going to fall when this one launches on the 9th? So let's go over to some just a few quick updates on just a few projects that have sort of changed a little bit but gone up since I last talked about them, and just very briefly here this week. So I'm not gonna hold you up too much longer with all the other games we've already talked about. This is Project Ironside. I'm backing this right now. I'm gonna be canceling this. I'll tell you right now. $399 for the table, another $200 to get it shipped, and they've basically just been throwing out upgrades, tabletops, upgrades since then. So really, it's probably going to cost you at least $1,000 if you're going to get some of that upgrade to really make it more along the way you may want it to actually be by the time you get it. And can you wait 2 years to get a table like this as well? Do you need it sooner? Do you want it sooner? Can you just go over to one of the local stores and buy something that's going to be much quicker and much easier to get into your house much sooner, right? That's not going to cost you $200 to get there in the first place. So I like the idea of it. If you could get it to me in 6 months, I'd have a better idea or consideration of it. But right now, I guess I'm just going to have to pass. What's also kind of cool is just like scrolling through the updates here, even in like the 24 hours since I covered them in the video for yesterday, of seeing some of the changes. And I always wonder, with some of these smaller ones, like I was mentioning earlier, I like covering these smaller ones, and I see the increase in a few of these, not the big ones, right? With all the big ones, but things like, where are we talking about the ones from yesterday? Waking Shards is, significantly more than when I covered it yesterday. Compass Archive seems to be a couple thousand up as well. There was one other here. Ape Quest seems to be, again, a couple thousand up. And I just wonder, do people actually watch my video or link to that? And, actually, do I have any influence? I don't think so. But I'd like to think so in my head, at least. Anyway, Sea of Legends, $200,000. It's got 2 weeks left. 8 stretch goals are unlocked. And how do you feel about more of this? How do you feel about just more gameplay content? In the 7 stretch goals previously, it's just more legendary rewards packs offerings. So more characters, more pirates that you're going to be utilizing, and unique tentacle upgrades, because you need unique tentacles, right? So I released the Kraken, right? Hyperspace Kraken right down there. Hyperspace Underwater Kraken in that case. That's all I'm going to talk about that one. And then let's go over to Robomon, which is $134,000, almost 300% of its funding goal, which is pretty freaking sweet, actually, for a game. I was like, okay, I can see people liking this, but 6 digits, going to probably come close to breaking $200,000 by the time it's done. That's really impressive. And this is an indie game, and this is a cool project. This is a project that I love, and it's well priced. You're going to get a lot of content. This is going to be a better solo game than a 2-player game. I'll put that out there right now. You can get an expansion with it as well if you want. And let's see what else we got for stretch goals, because I haven't been paying attention. Let's see, new locations, new variant cards in terms of weather, new Robomon, new locations. So yeah, you're getting more content. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Gabe's doing well. You put out a good game there, and give him some support if you have any interest in that. Tabriz, I'm supposed to get a copy of Tabriz. I'm supposed to be able to preview that by the time it comes out. I wonder if they've forgotten about me. Whatever. If they did, great. If they didn't, I don't even know when that was launching. I don't forget offhand. Anyway, that's it for the updates. Like I said, brief. So there you go. Final thoughts, right? Final thoughts. Long enough video as it was, covering all of those freaking games, right? I told you there were a lot of games. The next week doesn't have as many, but still September is really, not light and fluffy like a lot of July and August have been. So I wasn't kidding about watching your wallet from that sense, because there's always, just like last week, the shards, Waking Shards, Ape Quest, the I'm completely forgetting it, the archive, the Compass archive from small box games, all of those are just coming out of nowhere too this past week. And so you could easily spend another 60-70 bucks on those games, let alone the big ones that I just talked about in the first place. So that's always interesting. Let's see. Yeah, I put out a new review type this week. The love it, leave it, or lose it, meaning I love it, it's staying in my collection. The leave it, it's staying for right now, I could see myself going either way in the future. And the lose it, meaning I'm gonna throw it on the trade pile or the for sale pile because it just doesn't fit for some reason. So let me know if you like that format. Otherwise, I'm thinking about just going back to the format of, you know what, here's a brief overview, here are my likes, my dislikes, 5 minutes, tops of just smashing stuff out quickly. And that one, actually, I did a lot of B-roll footage over it, so it's not like super extended, because I think I talked about all 3 of those games with B-roll footage, pros and cons, in like 10 minutes. So that was really impressive. If you want to watch that and support me as well, that'd be awesome. Otherwise, TV time. My wife actually came up to me today and said, hey, are you interested in watching Lord of the Rings with me? The new one from Amazon. So we're gonna watch that together. They haven't watched any shows together in a long time, so that was kind of cool. I'm excited about that. We probably won't watch it for another week or 2 or 3 or anything like that. So otherwise, I'm finally getting into What We Do in the Shadows. I mean, it's growing on me. At the same time, I don't know. Then the only other thing I'm watching is Borgen, Borgen, the Danish show where a female politician becomes the prime minister and all of the trials and tribulations. It's a little bit more like West Wing-ish if it was a Danish version, but obviously it's a little more complicated because in our 2-party system, it's one versus the other, right? And in this system, they've got like the 5 or 6, and they have to get 2 or 3 of them to agree with them to even form the cabinet and the government in the first place, because if then they can't agree or then they split, then the whole government collapses and then they have to get reelected. And so there's a lot more dynamic from that aspect. So it's a little bit intriguing at the same time, because that's really what our country should have too. Anyway, side political rant there. Yeah, and then we're just gonna go and see what else we got going. Speaking of other videos, I am gonna be talking about bias, and I mentioned it yesterday at the beginning of the video, that little Twitter conversation about the swords, and how that relates to bias, and the influence that can have on people and things, and not just in our industry but across other industries, and why, as much as people were poo-pooing it, as much as people were overreacting to it, had people on both sides. I think it's a worthwhile topic to discuss, because I think both sides actually have merit. And nowadays, when you have a discussion like that, all that was happening on Twitter as well as Facebook, which you had like other sides just talking over each other and saying, well, I'm absolutely right over here and I'm absolutely right over here, so I'm going to give you the Liege perspective, right? That's why you tune in. Liege perspective. And there'll be 700 of you that watch that video, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. And I'll probably have a stack of games sitting next to me, of games that I've gotten this week, and just as an enticement of things that I'm going to be just sort of playing around with and showing off at the same time. So at least some background eye candy at the same time. So that's what you come here for. Patreon down below. I owe them a post, so that's going to be coming out soon this weekend. Long weekend. I'll give them something special. Yeah. I'm going to have to do I have to film my Etherfields review too. Speaking of spicy meatballs. Yeah. Okay, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Stay classy. Have a great long weekend. Maybe something one day, maybe something both days. I have a lot of editing to do. I'm behind on filming stuff. I have a birthday party of a nephew that I have to go to as well today. So I really was hoping to film more or play more, and neither is happening because, either I go and I'm forced to go to the beach all day, which I hate the beach. I freaking hate the beach. Like, there's a reason I am pasty white, right? Like, I have very sensitive skin. I have, like, nevi all over the place. So, like, my dermatologist is even like, don't get sun, right? I know, too much information, Liege rambling at the end, but it's either force and go do that, or I either have to stay here with the 2-year-old. So right, I'm not getting any filming or game playing done with monitoring the 2-year-old. I mean, he's a super precocious 2-year-old, but I can't leave him like completely alone. I only can leave him like sort of CPS alone. No, I'm just kidding. The kid barely ever leaves my sight anyway when we're together. Kid loves his dad when he's alone. So, I really feel good about my parenting from that aspect, because of the 3 kids that I have at this point, that is a weird statement. Of my 3 children, especially at this age, and ever since he's been a baby, he's always liked me more than my other kids did, right? And like, if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like especially like my wife stays at home, and so it's always been like 80%, you know, mom and 20% dad, right? With him, it's probably more like 55-45, which is really kind of cool and it's kind of scary at the same time. I'm like, you know, why are you coming to me like with this? Like, are you sure you're supposed to be coming to me? Shouldn't you be going to your mother? And he's like, no. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So we'll see. That'll be great. I'm not going to the beach. I'm staying home with a 2-year-old, in case that was any question. In case there was any up for debate there. It's not up for debate. That's all I got. Rambling on at the end here. That's why you tune in. That's why you watch all the way to the end of the video, folks, because you get that sort of insight into Liegeisms. I'm done. Peace out.